You're listening to the House Hacking Podcast, your number one place for all things house hacking.
Dan, I mean, we've been chatting forever. You've had me on to talk with your group. We did a case study with you a while back. I mean, we finally got you on the show. I appreciate you taking time out. I mean, it's obviously when we're recording this, it's a Sunday and it happens to be Father's Day. So thank you for taking a little bit of your Father's Day morning with us. How you doing and where are you calling in from for folks that don't know you?
I'm doing great, and happy Father's Day to everybody out there who happens to be a father. Thank you very, very much for having me, Andrew. Yeah, I'm glad we could finally make this happen. Excited to be here. I am calling in from Centennial, Colorado, where I live, which is a suburb just south of Denver, Colorado.
Awesome. And then let's just start high-level summary, a little bit about your investing and house hacking career.
Sure. High level, my wife and I have been investing in real estate for 6 years, I would say, which by just is actually when we met. My wife had started doing some real estate investing. She had a couple properties when I met her. And when we met, I had one before that, which was a house hack. And so we started really actively pursuing real estate investing about 5 or 6 years ago. And so I did have a house hack before I met her. And then the house that we currently live in, we are house hacking out the basement. So and we have 15 units total across 2 different states, just as investments.
Awesome. And there's a couple of reasons I wanted to have you on the show. You know, one was this youth group, which we'll get to, that sort of help them grow about personal finance and investing, your broader real estate investing career, and the fact that you're still currently house hacking, because a lot of folks, when they think of house hacking, it's the room rental, have 4 or 5 roommates, and you only do it when you're in your 20s, and it's not something that works well for a family. So, I mean, obviously, she got you started in real estate investing. You know, your other properties, you've got some, is it Michigan, correct? And then here in Colorado.
Yep.
What made y'all decide to do house hack with your current property, or was sort of the house hacking the afterthought? It's, hey, we got this property and it has this extra benefit to it. What was the mindset, and how'd you ending up with this property?
Yeah, this property that we live in, it's a little bit of it's not the normal path for us to move in here. So I mentioned my wife had a couple units when I met her. One of them was a house in California where she was living. She moved to Colorado. That's when I met her. So she did a 1031 for one of those houses in California. And as you know, real estate in California is pretty expensive. So that one house, it had appreciated quite a bit. So she had quite a bit of equity in that. And when we were looking for places to buy in Colorado to exchange that property, and if your listeners know about 1031s, there's a time crunch on that. You only have so long to do it. So we weren't really finding much. In this house that we live in now, came up. It was not what I would say was the ideal investment property. Purchase price was pretty high, but the down payment that we were able to put on it was significant because of the 1031 exchange coming over. And so originally this house was a rental for a little over 2 years. It's a 3-bedroom house with 3 baths. And then it happens to be in a great location. And so in the back of our minds, we always kind of thought, well, it'd be nice to live there. But we were living in a different property that we were kind of living, fixing long-term rent strategy. So we had a tenant in this house who ended up just not paying rent for a while, and we filed an eviction notice. Before that went through, his family bailed him out and he left. And then the opportunity just came for us to move in, change the use from a rental to a primary residence, because again, the location is great. So when we did that, the house has kind of a weird format or layout. It has 3 levels, including the basement. each level has 1 bedroom and 1 bath.
Okay.
And it was just the 2 of us. So we really would never go into the basement, and we knew that we never really would. And the basement has the bedroom, bathroom, and a large living space, and then some storage. So we kind of from the get-go, even before we probably moved in, we thought that is a perfect house hack. We'll just rent out the basement. Unfortunately, we found out when we were kind of deciding to move in that the HOA for the community that we're in doesn't allow Airbnb. That was our original plan. And it has to be 30 days or more for a tenant. So then we just said, well, we'll house hack it. So that's the next best option. And it actually has worked out really, really well. So we rent out the basement, and then we have the main floor and the upstairs for ourselves.
Well, so what'd y'all end up buying that property for?
Purchase price was $615,000.
Okay, so pretty big property. And what was the ended up mortgage payment being on that? Taxes, insurance, sort of all in.
Yeah, because it was a 1031 exchange and we had a sizable down payment. I think we put about $240,000 down. The mortgage wasn't too bad. It was, I'll say if you add up principal, interest, taxes, insurance, it's just over $2,000 a month.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, pretty affordable considering you had the large down payment. And when it was this long-term rental, what were you actually able to rent it for?
So we rent the basement out for $1,000 a month. It's fully furnished. It's actually a really nice living space. So yeah, we get $1,000 a month for it.
And then I guess stepping back, while it was a long-term rental before you guys moved in, what was it renting for?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. It was renting for, I think, $2,100 a month.
Okay. So was this, you were essentially about breaking even then on the property, just sort of needed a place to put the equity from the 1031 because that time clock was running down. And then, you're bringing in enough to cover the mortgage, but not really enough for maintenance and, long-term cap expenses.
You got it. Yeah, it was kind of a break even, but we needed a place to put that money, and time was of the essence. So
yeah. I mean, if you were rolling over, $240,000 in equity, I mean, you could have had a $40,000 tax hit. So it's almost, your thought process was, let's just place the money in a property. We're in Colorado in a good area. It should really appreciate. And as long as we're okay. So that was the strategy with it. And then you said you wanted to change it to Airbnb, like rent the whole house on Airbnb, or you were originally thinking of when you were living in it, you Airbnb the basement?
Yeah, the Airbnb strategy only came into play once we decided that we were going to move in.
Okay.
And
okay. So but before we jump into that, I'm just sort of wanting to follow along here. You mentioned so many cool, good things. So the tenant stopped paying. Was this during COVID or was this sort of pre-COVID?
This was pre-COVID, actually.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And I mean, did the tenant qualify fine and then just came on hard times, or was this just, they were misspent youth and decided not to pay rent? I mean, I'm wondering if there's a lesson learned here. Like, did you not qualify someone as well because you were newer investing? Like, how did this whole problem come about?
Yeah, and it was a problem. I mean, I think at the worst point, he was behind 3 months in rent. And as I said, rent was a little over $2,000. So we're talking some major money.
Yeah.
So the house is a really nice house. Like I said, it's the purchase price was a little over $600,000. So I would say it's an A-class rental, and the location is in a great place. And so we knew we would get hopefully some high-class tenants. Well, the first tenant we had was great. No issues. They just decided to move out of state, so they left. Then the second tenant, which was the one who had the payment issues, he was recently divorced. And the house that he had been living in with his former wife was a really nice house, probably nicer than this one. But when the divorce happened, I think it hit them both financially pretty hard. And looking back, I don't think he was really fully aware of how that how that would affect him, his personal finance. He was not good at finance. I mean, I think he would admit that too. He was not good at, maybe the wife was the one who handled all the finances for them. He had a teenage son that lived with him part-time, so he was in the house as well. And then I think something with his business kind of fell through. He was more self-employed. Now his credit score and his income history were great. He passed all of our background check, everything. It just, I think the divorce in combination with something with his business not panning out, he just came on extra hard times. So I don't know if there's a lesson to be learned there, but I think the lesson is you just never know what you might find.
I mean, if the credit was fine and the screening was all good, it sounds like there's not really anything you could have done, right? I mean, if you met the person, they seem decent, you get that gut feel of like, hey, they don't seem like a weirdo, and all the screening stuff comes in. I mean, what'd you collect for a security deposit? Did you just do one month rent?
Yep, 1 month rent.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's all sort of standard stuff. And you alluded to his parents help bail him out. So, I mean, how did it go 3 months? Was this like hey, I should be able to pay you next month and you're trying to be a nice guy? Like, why didn't you, just crack the whip on him right away? And
there's the lesson to be learned is that he had 101 excuses for why his rent was late and 101 reasons why we should stick with him because he had this deal going through or that was going to come around. And so we allowed it to kind of drag on probably much further than we should have. That's the lesson to be learned. I mean, going through an eviction and it's not a fun process as a landlord or as a tenant, I suppose. So, we really didn't want to have to go down there. So I think we were more susceptible to his excuses than we probably should have been. The idea.
Had you done an eviction before?
We had done one before. Yeah.
Okay. So you knew it wasn't necessarily a fun process. And then was he making any partial payments during this time, or was it just?
In the beginning, yes. But towards the end, no.
Yeah. So, man, and I think you're very right. This is probably the biggest lesson right here, right? It's like, don't accept a partial payment, because if you do, if the rent's the $2,100, if he only pays you $1,000, you can't evict for that month. I mean, looking back, what would you have done differently? I mean, if he did partial payments for a couple weeks, couple months, and then stopped paying, I mean, what would you have done differently now that you've got more experience under your belt?
Yeah, the thing I would do different is just stick to the lease and say, the rent was due on this day, you're now late. Our leases all say that for every day late, I think there's a surcharge, right? There's a fee they have to pay in addition to the rent they owe. But once it gets to, past a month overdue, it's time to start the wheels in motion for filing that eviction. Tenants will tell you everything they can dream of to stay in the property, but you just have to be a business. You have to be more business minded and say, if I don't have the money, then we gotta move forward, and you need to leave. So, and when the process was done, his family ended up bailing him out for most of the money that was owed to us. We definitely still lost $2,000 or $3,000 in the process, but the agreement was that this is why we accepted it. The family was going to help him move out. And we were just afraid that he was going to stay there for months and months. And so we accepted the kind of the partial payout of rents owed and fees and stuff so that he would actually vacate the premises. And then we could, I think originally we were thinking we would re-rent it, but then as we thought about it some more, we actually decided to move in ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, it's a smart choice, right? If you can get them out of the property willingly moving, it's better to get some money in your pocket and have them out versus try to hold out and get every single dime and let them still be in the property. And then what are the laws there in Colorado? How soon can you file like a pay or quit notice or take them to court?
I honestly don't know because we didn't get to that point. So we did have a lawyer involved with the eviction, but we didn't look into it that much.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you for sure.
Yeah. So for folks that are listening, every state and county is slightly different, but when I did a lot of affordable housing, I unfortunately had to do a lot of evictions, and most of the time it was the tenants I inherited. And the process that I learned from my mentor was on day one of the first of the month, the rent's due. On the second, it's technically late. I wouldn't charge a late fee until the 5th, but on that second day, if what rent wasn't paid, I would file my 10-day pay or quit notice, which was the law in North Carolina. And I would be a nice guy and let them pay rent up until the day we went to court. They'd have to pay for the court fees and everything. But I always took that process. And I was fortunate. My mentor told me this. He goes, if you want to be a nice guy, that's fine. You can be a nice guy, but go ahead and file your paperwork and deliver your notices. That way the clock is ticking. So that way, if they say, oh, Monday's the 1st, I get paid on Friday. Okay, that's fine. Here's your pay or quit notice on the 2nd. And then that way, if they don't pay on Friday, the clock's already running on your time. So whether it's a 3-day, 5-day, or 10-day period.
That's great advice. That's great advice. Yep.
So you got the property. Did he mess it up at all? Or was it pretty much, you could be ready to re-rent it or move in, or did you just have to do the normal turnover, a little bit of flooring, a little bit of maintenance work, some paint? What was the condition of the property?
He left it in good condition. I think he generally was a good guy. He just came on some really hard times. So when we got the property back, it was in there was no damage or extra cleaning that needed to be done. But then when we made the decision to make it our primary residence, we did decide to do some upgrades. And so we probably took a month. We had some painters in here and put some new flooring in before we actually moved in ourselves.
So it would have been fine as a rental. You just did these upgrades to say, hey, we just want a nicer quality product for us to live in it.
Exactly. Yeah, it would have been
awesome.
Totally fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And to me, that's the way you do house hacking, right? Is you don't ever want to over improve a property, but make it so it's nice and comfortable for you to live in. Awesome. So did you divide up the property? Did you do a door between these 3 levels? Did the very lower level have a walkout sort of basement door? Just sort of talk about how'd you stage the property to get it ready for house hacking? Did you do anything special?
No, great question. We did. So the basement doesn't have a separate entrance.
Okay.
Our tenants come in the main. When I say tenants, we've had 4 now, but there's only ever been 1 person living down there at a time. So our tenant will come in the main entrance and then go downstairs. So the basement, we did put down there a refrigerator, a microwave, a hot plate, and kind of somewhat of a kitchen area, although it's not an official kitchen area. And so what we've learned through the process of a few different tenants in the basement is that it's all about how we set it up to work the way that we want it to work. So in the ideal situation, which we have now, the tenant, the laundry's on the main floor. We share the laundry, we share the main entrance. But other than that, they basically have the downstairs. That's where they're at. It's a very nice living space and plenty of room, and it's furnished with very nice furniture. So it's not like they're living in a dungeon. When I say basement, it makes it maybe seem kind of dark and dreary, but it's definitely not. It's a really nice space. So they're very comfortable down there. We now decide when we're screening tenants, we kind of say, hey, if you're a foodie and you love cooking, this probably isn't the best fit for you, because although we will let you use our kitchen and our dishwasher at times, our ideal situation would be that you're eating, you're doing your stuff downstairs as far as your cooking and your eating.
Do you actually put that in your listing description, or do you mention that when, people are coming to see the place?
We both. So it's in the description. And then when we walk them through the property, we make that very clear. Now that we've learned that because we had one tenant where we didn't set the boundaries, so to speak, too well. And she was using our kitchen on a regular basis, which isn't the end of the world. I mean, she was very nice. We've got along great with all of our tenants, but it just was the main floor, which is our living space, kind of became our living space with our tenant.
Yeah.
She would sit on our at our table because there was a good view of the park outside. And so now we've learned that when we walk them through the property, we make it very clear what the expectations are as far as where they spend most of their time.
I love that. That's a golden nugget right there, right? I mean, put it up front in the listing and then reinforce it when you do the showings. And now you've got that clear expectation. Awesome. So did I hear that correctly? You actually furnished the unit and provide it furnished?
Yes, it's furnished, fully furnished.
Okay. Awesome. And then you're renting it downstairs for $1,000 a month, furnished. Do they have to pay any utilities on top of that?
Nope. 1,000. That's all in for them.
And then are these short-term tenants as far as like traveling nurses or 12-month leases?
We start out with a 1-month lease and then we go month to month after that. We originally thought traveling nurses would be our main clientele, our main tenants. We haven't had any of those. So what we found is that our tenants we've had so far, and we are on number four right now, they've all been female, by the way. So my wife and I decided that, I work a full-time job, but my wife works from home. And so my wife said, I want to be comfortable. I prefer that we have a female tenant. And I don't know how it works otherwise, but in Colorado, as long as you're renting a space in your primary residence, you can specify gender, and that's not considered discrimination.
You're not violating the fair housing laws. Okay, great.
Correct. Because it's your primary residence, and that makes sense. Now, if you're renting a separate unit, you can't discriminate for any of those reasons. So we've only rented to female tenants. They've all been, I would say, in their 30s or 40s, professionals. One woman was a manager of a Hallmark store. One woman was a manager of a Lululemon retail store. One woman worked for the local utility. So they're all, maybe they were just in a place in life where they needed a place to stay for a few months. I think our longest tenant was here for about 2 years, and our shortest one was maybe 5 months.
And where you find the tenants? Are you actually marketing on Airbnb, but a minimum 30-day rental, or are you using Furnish Finder, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace?
We've tried them all, and I thought Airbnb would be the place where we would get our tenants, but we didn't get hardly any hits from there. We found all of them through Craigslist, honestly. Yeah.
Awesome. So I want to circle back to one thing you had mentioned was your HOA wouldn't let you do short-term rental. So was short-term rental allowed in your city and county?
If it's in your primary residence, yes.
Okay. So, and I think this is a brilliant little thing that I want to make sure for folks that are listening, don't miss this. You are legally allowed to do it in the city and state, but your HOA wouldn't let you. So when you bought the property, was that actually in the HOA bylaws, or was it something that was changed afterwards, or it was there and you just didn't really look at it because you were just thinking this is going to be a long-term rental?
Yeah, you're right at the end there. It was always in the HOA rules and regulations. But when we bought the property with that 1031 exchange, we didn't think we would be living here, and we didn't think we would ever be Airbnb-ing it. So we never checked that piece of it. We just thought it would be a long-term rental for as long as we kept the property. And then, things change. So the lesson, and I'm sure your listeners are aware because I'm sure you've covered this, but if you're buying a property with the intention of short-term rentals, yes, you definitely have to look over those HOA docs and maybe even get a feel of the HOA community, because even if it's allowed, it doesn't mean your neighbors, if it's a condo or something, are going to be really friendly to your guests. I've seen that situation happen too, where guests leave bad reviews because neighbors hate that unit is being short-term rented, and that's not good for your business either.
And I just want to reiterate this one more time. If you're in a condo association or even just a single family residence neighborhood and there's an HOA, you've got to read those documents, because I've even seen ones in smaller buildings and smaller communities where they limit the number of properties that can be owned by investors, or they'll only say, hey, there's only 10 units in this building, no more than 20% can be used as long-term rentals. And the two folks in there that have them as long-term rentals, they're not going to stop anytime soon. And, it's one of those things where it can very quickly mess you up, or reduce the number of options you have, whether it's short-term rental or long-term rental. Mm-hmm. Awesome. So you're living in a $600,000-$700,000 property, great neighborhood, great area, A-class area, and it's costing you about $1,000 a month because you've got your tenant downstairs for $1,000. What would it normally cost you to have a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom? If you were to go out and rent a place in your area, you have any idea what that might cost you?
Yeah. And so I'll do you one better. I'll compare where we're living now to where we were living before. The place we were living before was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo. We bought that as a primary residence. So we only put 5% down on that, and we lived there for a couple years. But it was a condo. And it's a nice condo. I'd say B class, B minus. But they had no garage, no assigned parking. It was kind of a walk from where we would park to our condo. You had to go up a flight of stairs. And it was maybe 1,100 square feet. So it was a little on the small side. When we moved into this unit, our expenses for mortgage, taxes, insurance, and utilities didn't go up much at all. The main reason for that is because we bring in $1,000 a month for house hacking, and the large down payment that we put on this place kept the mortgage payment low from the get-go. And so if we were to go out and rent a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, well, that condo right now rents for about $1,400, $1,450. And so we're living in this house for right about the same as we would have been paying, or we were paying, to live in a 2-bedroom condo with a lot less space, no garage, no yard, etc.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, to me, that's a win. Like, it's always great when you can have that grand slam, house hack where every single expense is covered and you're getting extra money on top of that. But, there comes a point in life when you just, you don't want to have the 4 or 5 roommates and live in a B minus area, and you want to live in a good area. And, when you can live below the average cost of living and have all the extra space in the yard and a better area, to me, that's a house hack win, right?
Definitely. I'm a huge proponent of house hacking for people who are young, but my wife and I are in our 40s, and we just had a kid. So, but it still works. It still works. Yeah. And if you're talking about $12,000 a year in extra income, that's a game changer. It helps us do a lot of other things that we maybe wouldn't do. And the inconvenience is there. I mean, it definitely is there, but it's not so. I mean, it's easily worth $12,000 for that. Yeah. To have someone living downstairs.
And it doesn't have to be permanent, right? There could be come a point in time when you said, you know what, we're good. We've got enough other rentals bringing in cash flow plus jobs, and we don't want to make that little inconvenience anymore. And that's what I love about it, right? Do it for as long as you want, and then change it based on where your needs are at, and you use it as a financial tool.
Exactly. Yep. That's what we're doing.
Awesome. So I guess jumping forward a bit, how long do you think you'll stay in this property, and do you foresee not renting out that basement anymore?
We will be here for at least 2 or 3 more years, maybe longer. Like I said, we had a kid recently, and so when he is older, we may look to move into a neighborhood that's a little more family friendly. The neighborhood we live in now is more of a retirement type. It's not a retirement community, but there just happens to be a lot of retired people in our neighborhood, in our community. But we might stay here because we really like the house and it's a great location. So now that we have a kid, maybe freeing up that space downstairs, because we can afford it. It's just we really like having $12,000 of extra income every year. And so that's kind of, it's on the table right now in discussion about whether we would have the tenant move out. It could happen next month, or it might not happen at all. But we do have that option because it's on a month-to-month lease. And so we'll see.
Awesome. So, I mean, looking back, now that you're up to 15 units, I mean, and you've got all this experience under your belt, what would you have done differently throughout your sort of house hacking experience and even maybe your broader real estate investing experience?
I think the things I would do differently with the house hacking experience, we've already covered. You know, if someone's not paying rent, start the eviction process as soon as you can. Making sure you screen tenants well and laying out the guidelines and the rules and the boundaries, especially if you're house hacking, as many people do, in a house where every room has a different tenant. So maybe you have 4 or 5 people living in a house together. We've never done that style of house hacking, but man, if you are, those boundaries and those rules and those expectations become 10 times more important because of the fact that there's that many people living there and they're not good friends. Maybe they become good friends or maybe they don't, but so that would be the lessons we've learned, the things we would do differently with the house hacking part. With the real estate investing in general, I would do a lot of things differently, but only because I know in hindsight what, I mean, no one I think ever knew that the real estate market would be going this crazy for this long. And who knows how long it will continue to do that. So knowing that, if I could go back 10 years, I'd buy as many properties as I could. I would leverage the heck out of everything and I would have bought a ton of properties. But
me too. I wish I would have bought so many more properties, 2010, 11, and 12. But who knew it would keep running the way it is?
I don't second guess what we've done. We are in a really good position. We're very grateful and fortunate. We tend to do quality deals over quantity. We have 15 units and we're not one of those couples that wants to own 100 units or do 100 deals a year. We might get to 20 units, maybe not even that many. And I think that's probably where we'll stay.
I love it. One of the things that bothers me a little bit, or I'd say it's a little bit of a pet peeve, all the marketing for every real estate podcast or every real estate article is always like 0 to 1 billion units in only 6 months. And it's like, that's awesome. But for most folks, it's 10, 12, 15 units. And that can be, if you're making an extra $1,000 a month for most people, that's life changing. That lets you max out a retirement account, pay off debt, put money away for a kid's college account. So I love it. 15, maybe get to 20 and you're good to go.
Yeah. And since you brought up, that's kind of one of my pet peeves as well, is when all the different podcasts and blog articles are highlighting these people that do hundreds of deals. But along with that, another pet peeve of mine is when they say, I own $5 million of real estate. Well, that doesn't mean anything to me, because if you're 95% leveraged, that's not very good. As well as when they say, I bring in $50,000 a month in gross revenue. Again, well, if you have $55,000 a month in expenses, you're negative. That doesn't mean much to me either.
Marketing tactics. I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Dan, before we let you go, we like to ask all of our guests a set of final 6 questions. Are you ready for them?
The famous 6.
You bet. Let's do it.
Awesome. All right. So question number 1, what is your favorite personal finance related resource? Blog, book, podcast, YouTube channel, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I have a couple, if it's okay. Book, I'd say Set for Life by Scott Trench. It's my favorite personal finance genre kind of book. And then I'll mention a podcast that isn't really well known in the FI space, but I love it. It's capitalism.com by Ryan Daniel Moran. I'm not sure if you've heard of that.
I haven't. And I'll look that up and put that in the show notes for folks if you're out driving or running or walking. That way you can go to the show notes and check that one out.
Yeah, he's a great host. And it's not a FIRE or even real estate investing. It's more entrepreneur mindset, business growth kind of a podcast.
All right. So on to question number 2, what is your favorite real estate related resource?
Yep. Everybody, I think, knows about Bigger Pockets. So I'll go beyond that. A podcast that I've started listening to more lately, it's actually a guy that's here in Denver as well. It's called the FI Team Podcast. So FI Team Podcast. And it's definitely real estate focused, but they talk more about general FI topics as well.
Awesome. And we'll put that into the show notes as well for folks if you haven't heard of that one. All right. So question number 3, what has been your favorite travel destination so far?
Favorite place I've traveled to so far, I think would be, I'll do 2. They're very different. For a beach lifestyle, Hawaii is we've been there 3 times and love it. Can't wait to get back. And then as far as mountain type vacation, Glacier National Park in Montana is my favorite.
I like the contrast between the two because they're definitely very different types of travel vacation. All right. So question number 4, what's next on your travel vacation list?
We've been planning quite a bit lately because during COVID, we didn't do any traveling. A lot of the things we would normally do got canceled. So the end of the summer, we're heading to Montana. And then fall break, I'm a teacher. So my fall break in October, we're headed to Florida. In winter break, we're headed to Mexico. And then spring break next year, we're headed to Palm Springs, California. So we're excited.
You got them lined up.
Yes. Yeah. We're ready to start traveling again.
Awesome. All right. So question number 5, what is the biggest bucket list item you have not accomplished yet?
Completing an Ironman triathlon.
Ooh.
Yes. I've done some triathlons and I'm a runner, but doing the Ironman is one of my bucket list items that I want to get someday.
Awesome. That's a good one. All right. And then the 6th and final question, what is your favorite life hack?
My favorite, it's one I'm working on currently, but it changes everything. And that is trying to allow yourself to be happy in the present instead of, this is the trick I've been caught up in for quite a while. Instead of saying, I'll be happy when X happens or when I get to this goal, flipping that script and saying, I'm going to be happy in the present now. And then that will allow me to get to my goal quicker and easier down the road.
That's a really great one. Dan, I appreciate you being on the show. You know, for folks that want to learn more about you, where can they find you? And then, just quickly tell us about this other group that you run, because I think it's pretty phenomenal what you're doing to help a lot of high school, college age kids. So tell folks about that as well.
Yeah, I'll mention the group quick and then where you can find me. And so I'll say, first of all, thank you to you, Andrew, again, for being a guest on our mastermind group a while back for these young aspiring real estate investors. Yeah, so I started an online community. It's called Sheeks Freaks, which is kind of a funny name, but it rhymes and it's memorable. So that's what we went with. But it is for young people. I would say anywhere between, our youngest is 14 years old, believe it or not, 14 to like 25. Young people who are interested in early financial independence, real estate investing, everything that falls under those umbrellas. We have a website, social media. We have the mastermind group. Everything right now is free. It's just about kind of giving back. And so if you have any listeners out there who are that young in that age range or know someone in that age range, please send them my way. You can find me or the website is a great place to start, sheeksfreaks.com. And if you want to get a hold of me, just Dan@sheeksfreaks.com.
Awesome. Dan, thank you again for being on the show and sharing your story with us. It was great catching up with you here today.
It was great. It was fun. Andrew, thanks for having me. And by the way, keep doing what you're doing, man, because you are crushing it. And what you do has a lot of value. Thanks to what you do as well.
Awesome. Thanks, man.